Everybody, good afternoon. Hello, my name is Steve Gregorian, President and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club. Welcome to today's meeting. It is a big birthday year for the DEC, 90 years of incredible speakers. We're excited to continue that tradition today. I especially want to welcome our DEC members, and if you're not a DEC member yet, just give me 10 seconds to convince you. Your next prospect, job, client, maybe best friend is right here in this room. We'd love to see you join, invest in you, join today, and build your network. And if you want to sign up today on your way out, we'll sweeten the deal. We'll give you a free event ticket you can use all the way through December. As we get started, I would ask you to just take a moment and silence your cell phones. And if you've been with us before, you know we always get started with a pledge and a prayer, so please stand and join me as we honor our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And kindly remain standing. Our invocation today will be delivered by Reverend Jeffrey Drutchess, President of Fish and Loaves Community Pantry. Reverend?
Let's bow our heads in a moment of reverence and prayer. Oh God, as we gather this day, at a decisive time for our nation, we are conscious as well that this is no less a pivotal moment for Michigan and the life of a political leader and stateswoman, Debbie Stabenow. The scriptures of the many faiths represented by the diversity across this very room call us to seek out for leadership those men and women of highest integrity who have an abiding heart for the common good and are concerned to serve with honesty and unselfishness. We are grateful, O God, for the way that Senator Stabenow has demonstrated what this all means. Striking has been her stalwartness, her steadfastness in speaking and acting on behalf of those, young and old alike, whose essential needs might otherwise have gone ignored and unmet. Across partisan lines, she has been one who has done her best to represent the concerns of farmers and workers, manufacturers, educators, and those of every walk of life whose successes contribute to the well-being and prosperity of our state. And she has accomplished all this as part of an entire generation of women who had to blaze fresh trails in relatable leadership without compromising who they were, overcoming the obstacles of preconceived notions and expectations. God, we thank you that you have inspired and led Senator Stabenow to use her many gifts and talents on our behalf so constantly and faithfully. Bless and renew her, even as she relinquishes in these months to come the mantle of leadership, to devote more time to family and other ventures dear to her. Likewise, as our state and nation look to the future, help us to discern and elect new leadership embodying the moral integrity and compassionate values which Senator Stabenow's 5 decades of service so truly exemplify. Invoking your blessing upon Michigan and America, and trusting in your divine guidance for the years ahead, we join in saying, Amen. Thank you.
Very nicely done, Reverend. Thank you. A couple of thank yous and a special welcome. We want to thank WJR Radio, who's doing their focus show live from today's DEC meeting, and you saw them as you walked inside. Thanks to WDIV Local 4 and PBS Detroit for live streaming today's meeting. And we want to say a special welcome to former DEC CEO, Beth Chappell. Thank you, Beth, for being with us. You know we love having students here. Today is no exception. They're here thanks to the generosity of our corporate sponsors. I want to let you know who is with us today. We've got 2 groups from Hazel Park High School. One of the groups, thanks to Ken and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. The other group is thanks to Bob Riney, who you'll see in a moment. Bob's, of course, from Henry Ford Health. A group from Schoolcraft College, thanks to Stephanie and Ford Motor Company. And a group, of course, the best and brightest, and that would be from the Manugian School in Southfield, thanks to Griffin and General Motors. I also forgot, don't let me forget, Adam Robbins and Accenture, thank you for the Grosse Pointe North students. So please join me in a round of applause for our students and sponsors. A couple of quick things on your tables. Our sponsor brochure, I want to take a moment always to thank our corporate sponsors and partners. We would not be able to bring you today's programs like we do without your generosity. So thank you if you're part of that group. If you would like to join that group, I'd love to talk with you, and there's lots of great benefits I can talk to you about. Also on your table is our season lineup. So, okay, October is jam-packed already, and we think we've got something for everyone. And trust me when I tell you this, there's more to come. So next Monday, October 7th, Ali Velshi is out with a brand new book on democracy. He'll be doing a fireside chat with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Get your tickets for that. October 15th, we'll host the presidents of U of M, MSU, and Wayne State. Tons more on the website, and trust me, tons more to come. So get your tickets before they sell out. So 90 years, I mentioned, 90 years of speakers, and those speakers really tell the history of our country. Senator Stabenow, you now join a distinguished list of 20 others who spoke at the DEC on this day, October 2nd. The first of those was in 1950, but let me just mention a couple of the names that you'll recognize. On this day at the DEC, Richard Headley, J.W. Marriott, and in 2019, I know she was here earlier, Debbie Dingle and Fred Upton were on our stage, and Senator Stabenow, you have visited the DEC 7 times, with your first in 2003. And we are so honored and pleased to welcome you today as our 21st speaker on this day in DEC history. So thank you and congratulations. All right, finally, we want you to use your smartphone and be involved in today's program. You can take lots of photos and share with your social media network. And also you can submit a question for Senator Stabenow using the QR code that you will see on the table in front of you. And those questions will make their way to our presiding officer, who I'm about to put to work. Bob Riney is a familiar face to all, President and CEO of Henry Ford Health. He is a DEC board member, an amazing supporter of the club and me personally. And Bob, as you know, is behind so many good things that happen here in our city. And man, oh man, if you have not checked out the Destination Grand project, take a look at it. Bob and his team are going to knock that one out of the park. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bob Riney.
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, everybody. I know it's been said, but it can't be said enough. Go Tigers and go Lions. It is truly a great time for sports fans in this city, and Pistons and the Red Wings are going to be a lot better and competitive teams this year as well. It's my pleasure to introduce today's guest, and I was honored when asked by Senator Stabenow to serve as the presiding officer. Made in Michigan through and through, U.S. Senator Debbie Stabenow, since 2001, continues to lead on public policy and improve the lives of the people of Michigan. Throughout her years in public service, she has opened doors for women and girls. Among her many firsts, and I had forgotten this, she was the first woman elected to the United States Senate from Michigan. As the author of 2 landmark programs that are transforming the vital health of our Great Lakes, there is no greater champion for the Great Lakes, natural resources, and Michigan's way of life. Senator Stabenow has been impactful in many other ways as well, including the chairwoman of the powerful Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, as well as helping to write the Affordable Care Act. And I will tell you from personal and professional experience, she is beloved and respected throughout the entire healthcare industry in the country. And it's not because she has agreed with every single thing that we've requested. It's because she's competent. She has taken the time to learn, understand the complexities of this industry and represent patients and the citizens in a way that I don't think anyone at this point fully appreciates. It's a remarkable story. Our moderator today is a familiar face to all as well, Chuck Stokes. Chuck is the editorial public affairs director for WXYZ TV Channel 7 in Detroit, Michigan. Additionally, as you know, he serves as moderator and producer of Spotlight on the News, Michigan's longest running weekly news and public affairs show created back in 1965. Please give a warm DEC welcome to Senator Stabenow and Chuck Stokes.
Oh my goodness. It's great
What a great
to be
crowd.
Yes, it's wonderful. Thanks, Bob.
Thank
for
you,
the
Steve,
introduction.
and thank you, Bob Riney. And thank you for all of you being here. And thank you to the senator who was gracious enough, one, to accept this invitation and also accepted the invitation for me to be able to have this chat with you. We did something similar last year for my Spotlight show in studio, but we didn't have all of you out there. So this was a little different, and we're pleased to do it. The senator and I go back a long way. I can't tell you how many interviews in the studio and out of the studio we've done throughout the years, but they've all been a pleasure to do. But I'll share one little quick thing with you before we get into everything. You know, a lot of times you can tell a lot about people by how they react to situations. And I don't know if the senator will remember this, but years ago we made her our Channel 7 Newsmaker of the Year, an annual thing that we do. And so we drove down to East Lansing, and it was a blizzard. And we spent a good portion of the day with her, and she played the piano, and we did all sorts of things, only for me to get back to the studio and pop the tape in, because back then it was tape, not digital. And there were beautiful pictures, and there was no audio. And so I had the embarrassing position of calling the senator and saying, guess what? And I have never seen anybody in elected office so gracious and made us feel so welcome to come back down and repeat some stuff that we had to do. So we thank you for doing that. Yeah. Before I don't get into trouble, my wife, who's a 1977 communications graduate of Michigan State University, said to tell you, go green, go white.
Go white,
okay.
yes, go green, go white, come on.
Much to the dismay of my son-in-laws, who are from that other school in Ann Arbor.
I know.
Okay.
Well, my family is split right down the middle.
That's right.
I went to
we have lots of wars in our house.
My son, U of M, my daughter, Michigan State. So we're split right down the middle.
Well, Senator, I thought we'd start because I always enjoy these type of interviews. The most fun is when you're talking to someone when they first get elected to a position, because they're so visionary and they're excited about all the things they want to do. And then the other one that's always fun to do is when someone is about to leave office, because they can be reflective and share the wisdom of their experiences. So we're about to do the latter. When I say to you, Debbie Stabenow, Ingham County Commissioner, State Representative, U.S. Senator, which one of those periods in your long, illustrious career bring the greatest smile to your face?
Oh my gosh, Chuck. You know, each one has been different. I mean, when I was in graduate school, ended up running for the county commission kind of by accident. I was part of a group of women trying to save the local nursing home, Ingham County Medical Care Facility. Some commissioners wanted to close it. I grew up around healthcare. It covered, it was the only place for low-income seniors in the community. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. So I got involved, ended up leading that, and we ended up saving it. And as I've said before, turned out I lived in the commission district of the person trying to close it. And everybody said, you should run for office. And I said, I don't know anything about politics. I don't know anything about it. But I was really mad. And so I ran and beat him. And, but that was such a learning experience. I mean, I had not, nowhere along the way have I said, I want that title. I want that title. It's just not what drives me. And so I learned a lot there. We built a county jail. We dredged Lake Lansing. I got involved in literally the nitty-gritty of things. Sat on the Community Mental Health Board, saw how everything ran. And then I realized that I felt I could do more in the state legislature. And so was in the State House and State Senate. And for me, it's been sort of looking at the issues and what I'm trying to do and then saying, oh, I think I could do more over there. Mm-hmm. And so it's and then, which led me to the United States Senate. Each area different. I loved being involved in the state legislature. I have over 50 public acts with my name on it that I worked on, from small business to mental health to healthcare and economic development. I think, though, the most exciting has to be the U.S. Senate. I mean, you're literally doing things that affect the entire country, things that we know about, things that we don't. To be successful, you have to learn and respect other states and other opinions. And even in the world we live in today, we still need to do that. I mean, the only way you really get things done is to listen to other people and respect them and try to find a win-win. Every time you go for the win-lose, you know, in the end, it's not going to get anything done. But being able to look internationally, to be able to travel on behalf of our government with senators is very exciting. And so I would say it would be the U.S. Senate because of the breadth of the things.
Responsibilities.
Yeah, leading the transformation on community mental health, the auto industry front and center, you know, all the changes, everything that's happened over the years. Agriculture, I mean, it's been exciting to be involved in all that.
Let's take a few of those and try to break them down a little bit. I'm going to start with agriculture, because if you go to Washington and you go over to the Senate building and you go into the room in which, when you were on the Agriculture Committee and leadership position, and they hang the portraits of the past chair people, you'll see one of the senator, but it's a lot different, than all of the other ones up there. The other ones are very ornate looking, but she's standing there with fruits and vegetables behind her, and that's
Michigan
what she wanted. So the fact that you requested that portrait be done like that, I think says a lot about where your heart and your passion was, both for your state, but also for the leadership position that you had there. And you've certainly talked many times about Michigan grows things.
Yes.
And you were proud of that in the Farm Bill. Talk about how you got that done and what that means to this state and where we need to be headed in the future.
Well, let me just say, when we first did this portrait, and I delayed it as long as I could, I didn't want to have somebody painting my portrait, but they finally said, you have to. You know, so, but they're done with somebody sitting at a desk, somebody sitting at a chair, somebody, you know, putting their hand on the back of a chair. They all look the same, and all of them but one are men. Blanche Lincoln from Arkansas was the first one. But they didn't have anything about agriculture in them, and it's in the agriculture room in yours. So I decided I wanted to do something that reflected Michigan. I was nervous. They do this big unveiling, and I knew it was going to be different, and I was frankly nervous because we designed it, and Josh, the wonderful portrait the artist for the state capitol now, who's done many of our governors, did it. And I wanted it to reflect different parts of Michigan. And so now one of the challenges as we grow 300 different crops, you can't get 300 crops in a painting. So poor Josh, we started with like 80, and then it still looked like, forget that. And so then the politics of which one do you pick became a real like real pressure, you know. So of course you have to have cherries and blueberries and apples but we're also #1 in asparagus, and we also actually are #1 commodities dairy. And so we went through all of this, but ended up, he did a wonderful job of that. And that really does reflect Michigan. We've got water in the background. I will tell you just a funny little story. #1 commodity dairy, and we're trying to figure out, okay, we've got all this pictures of fruits and vegetables. What do we do about milk? So we're trying to think about, do you have an old milk can? That didn't look good. Do you have this good? So finally we get to the very end, and there's beautiful trees, autumn trees in the back in the lake. So I said to him, would it look weird if we put 2 little cows in the back? And, you know, I said, this may be funny, but he tried, it actually fit. It fit with the lake and the forest, and 2 little cows. So we get to the unveiling, and it was very, very nice. Several hundred people came. It was wonderful. And we get all done. The first person that came up to me was from the Michigan milk producers, and he said, we saw the cows.
Mission accomplished.
So I said, okay, I did it. So, but you know, in Michigan, I grew up in town in Clare. My relatives were farmers, dairy farmers, hardest business in the world to be a farmer, by the way. Nobody gets up and has to look at the weather every day like a farmer. Nobody takes the risks, and with the climate crisis banging them over the head, it's only going to get worse. But I've always felt you don't have an economy unless you make something and grow something. That's what we do in Michigan. We make things, we grow things. 1 out of 4 jobs relates to the agriculture and food economy. 1 out of 3 is manufacturing. And so that's why I've always been involved in those things that involve strengthening manufacturing and strengthening agriculture. And then over the years, when I became chair on the ag front, traditionally the Farm Bill that's done every 5 years is very geared to the South, very geared to the big commodities. And when I mean South, I mean cotton, rice, peanuts, which are the things we don't grow. And we have everything else, soybeans, wheat, corn, sugar beets, and so on. But half of what we do, over half, is fruits and vegetables. And they were not included in the Farm Bill. And so you have about half the cash receipts of the country in agriculture didn't have a chapter in the Farm Bill. So I spent years, and finally, 2008, I said, I'm not supporting another Farm Bill unless we recognize fruits and vegetables. And we went to war. I mean, I practically had to give up my firstborn to get a fruit and vegetable title in the Farm Bill, which we got. And now it's just boomed in terms of expanding and supporting what our growers are doing, which they desperately need. And then 2011, when I came in to actually chair the committee, it's right when Detroit was beginning the big push, the wonderful things people in this room and all over have done for Detroit. And I was trying to figure out from a rural committee, how could I help Detroit? And the agriculture committee funds farmers markets. So I introduced myself. Dan Carmody was actually brand new on the job, and I said, tell me more about Eastern Market, and I want to help you. What are you doing? And there's a whole food economy, as you know, that we've now expanded. We've added more. There's meat processing and processing and commercial kitchens. So if you go to Eastern Market on a Saturday or a Sunday, you can rent a kitchen incubator for 8 hours a week rather than having to get your own commercial kitchen, make your product, and get your customers. And now we have people doing storefronts. I mean, we've been able to take people from customers at the Eastern Market to storefronts in neighborhoods all over Detroit in the food economy. So it's a long way of saying I've spent time, how do we leverage that? And now we have, the other thing that was a big fight is supporting what's called urban agriculture or local agriculture, of which Detroit, we're the leaders, Detroit, not me. Detroit is the leaders of urban agriculture. And that has become, particularly under COVID, when supply chains broke down, you know, the access to local food was huge, hugely important. And we now have all kinds of jobs. I had the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture in yesterday. We were walking through one of our great urban farms, Oakland Avenue, and talking and announcing some new funding for local food systems, for farmers, and so on. So in whatever I've done, I guess what I'm saying is I've tried to look at how do you take that and leverage it and build it out so that it can become something bigger and stronger and more meaningful. And one of the areas I feel great about is in agriculture. We've changed the face of what it looks like and the number of people that are benefiting from the jobs and so on.
Agriculture brings in a lot of money for this state, but our real bread and butter, without question, is the automotive industry.
Right.
I know that you drive an electric vehicle.
Chevy Bolt, made in Lake Orion.
But we also know that electric vehicles are not selling at the pace that the auto industry originally had projected and had wanted. What do you see as the future of the auto industry, and what should we and the big three be doing here in Michigan to prepare for what you believe and hope will be the future of the auto industry?
Well, I've been, obviously, since day one in the Senate and before, been involved with our great automakers. Let me just sort of start at the end with the punchline. Electric vehicles, that technology is coming. We're all going to be driving it. The question is, are they Chinese or American? That's the only question. China is coming. They have been able, because they are highly government subsidized and they steal our patents and have for years. If you go to the North American Auto Show and see the folks taking the pictures under the car and under the hood and so on, who are looking for everything they can to learn about our folks who, you know, we're the ones with the technology, with the brains, with the people who have developed all of this. But they're very good at taking it, and they've now got vehicles that they've brought into the India market, into Europe. They're coming into Mexico. They are not in the US yet because we're not letting them in. But the question is, who's going to make the future, not whether there's going to be a future. And and it needs to be here. It needs to be here. So I have focused ever since actually the bankruptcies, a very tough time for us, 2008, 2009, on how do we support our industry to create a level playing field. We're not China. We're not going to be having, you know, the government running everything in the automobile industry. Even though obviously there's regulations, obviously, you know, efficiency standards and so on. But the truth is we have to support the private sector to be robust and to be able to move forward. And so after the bankruptcies, I authored something that is still being used, Advanced Vehicle Technology Loan Program. If you want to retool a plant, build a plant, something related to clean energy, or maybe it's not autos, maybe it's solar, maybe it's wind. It's called, it's a low interest loan program. We now have several different tax credits, something called 48C if you're in manufacturing. I authored that back in 2009. We've re-upped it. Again, 30% tax cut if you're doing something in these areas. There's a number of new kinds of grants for component parts. The Department of Energy just announced 4 grants last Friday on the supplier end of things, including a nickel mine up in the UP, which is part of the materials, raw materials needed for batteries, but a facility here in Van Buren Township, one in Flint at Bjork City, one in Muskegon, and they're all component parts to help we need the supply chain here. We need to be making these here. And not only electric vehicles, but autonomous vehicles. The technology is here in America, and we have to make sure we are the ones leading on that. And let me just say, as somebody, I've worked on 3 pieces: the tax cuts, the production. What we did in the Inflation Reduction Act is change, and I've been pushing for years, that the tax cuts be based on production, a production tax credit. You don't get a battery credit unless you make it here. So we now have production tax credits, and which is, by the way, causing more batteries to be made in Michigan. There's the GM facility in Lansing that's going to open up the end of the year, Ford in Marshall. I mean, I could tell you across the country, we're now producing things here because that's how you get the tax cut. And same thing with solar and same thing with wind. So that's one thing. The other is the part that is infrastructure, charging stations. Probably the biggest thing I get asked from my Chevy Volt is, where do you charge? How long does it take? You know, and it's, you know, range anxiety. I mean, it's scary when I first started driving it. Now it's easy, but at the beginning, you know. There weren't, by the way, gas stations on every corner when Henry Ford and Thomas Edison created the first car. I mean, it happened over time. But the other thing is on the consumer front, making it affordable, which is why we've had the consumer credit. I will tell you that behind the scenes on everything coming at EVs right now are the folks that are going to lose a whole bunch of money in their industry once this is adopted, and this is oil and gas. There's all kinds of efforts that have gone on for years. First to say, you know, the climate crisis isn't real. That's been a 50-year effort to tell us that, and we're paying a huge price now for that, including the storms that just happened. But secondly, now it's how do you undermine confidence to slow it down? And there's a whole group of people politically. In fact, in our state, which really, I can't believe that are undermining our own industry by what they say. And so I think we're fighting various things, natural competitions, issues on costs, issues on regulations, but we're also fighting, understandably. I mean, if you were going to lose your business if everybody stopped going to the gas station, you'd probably fight against it too. And so that's what's happening behind the scenes. It's a huge effort to try for us to undermine this. But I feel as an elected official from Michigan, I should not be doing that. You know, I should be helping to create the competition for the future, whether that's full electric now, whether that's hybrids, whatever it is. And the final thing I would just say is we have not mandated that you have to buy an electric vehicle. I did not buy an electric vehicle because the government told me I had to do it. And that's not going to happen, by the way. That is not going to happen. I mean, fuel efficiency standards going up will allow hydrogen. There's a lot of work being done on hydrogen, a lot of work on electric, on other areas. It is not. This whole idea of an EV mandate came right out of the marketing efforts of oil and gas. And I know this. And so I'm fighting for Michigan, and I'm fighting for our future and claiming the industries of the future. It's our people that created these technologies and innovations.
Senator, in the interest of time,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off in a rant, but it just bothers me because we're undermining, you know. Sorry.
No apologies needed. Sorry. There's a lot to get in, and you've had so many years of experience. I know there's a lot in your head that you want to get out to the public.
I'll give shorter answers.
That's okay. I'm going to couple the next two together because they're somewhat related. Bob Riney didn't give me the question, but he'll probably be appreciative that I've asked it. Regardless of who gets elected president a few weeks from now and which administration takes over, what do you think should be the next big step for health care? And do you believe that women's reproductive freedoms will play as pivotal a role in this election as some are saying?
First of all, women need to make our own health care decisions. Actually, everybody here needs to make your own health care decisions. And, you know, I think the folks on the other side of this really underestimated what happens when you not only take away that basic freedom, but all of the ramifications. And you know what it is. I have met with women. I've met with a woman from Texas who, you know, was trying to have a baby, had challenges, needed to go in for a D&C, which was categorized as an abortion. The emergency room said no, that she should go back out to the car, which she did, and wait until she was almost dead. Till she was, and she did. I mean, she didn't die, but she went back out and sat in the car, bleeding, until they go. This is not America. So, I mean, it shouldn't be America. So, and about 1/3, 1 out of 3 women live in a state right now where that's the situation. So will this be an issue? Yeah. It's going to be a very big issue for men and women who care about people having access to health care. And so now moving forward on health care, there are 2 very different visions depending on who wins the election. One vision to continue to build on the Affordable Care Act and affordability and have Medicare negotiate prescription drug prices. We've given them the authority to negotiate the first 10, and those prices, which will go online next year, are going to be somewhere between 40 and 80% cut. It's amazing when you look at the price differences. Expanding the $35 insulin to more than just seniors. We couldn't do that without bipartisan support, and we had no bipartisan support on any of that. But I think one is like, how do you move forward? How do we expand mental health? Near and dear to me, keep transforming mental health as part of health care, not with grants that stop and start, but as part of health care in the community. And the other side honestly wants to rip it all down. Eliminate the Affordable Care Act, undermine Medicare, Medicaid, veterans, the VA. I mean, you just name it. So it's a very different view, very different view. Because of the Affordable Care Act, 100 million of us with pre-existing conditions, somebody raise your hand if you don't have one, no. Are covered because of the ACA. And so I'm not saying there's not things that need to change. There's a lot of work. As Bob was saying, I do a lot of work in healthcare, way down in the weeds. Are there things that I want to change and improve? Are there too many rules? Are there, are there issues? Absolutely, absolutely. But this idea you can just throw it all out that is in nobody's interest.
All right. This will be my last question because we want to adhere to the time so that we can get to the Q&A that many of you have suggested questions. And I think it's something that you can answer pretty succinctly, knowing you. I saw a commercial this morning because we are bombarded with political commercials right now. And it was Curtis Hertel, who's running for Congress. Yes. And the first words out of his mouth was, "The problem with politics today are egos, big egos." So we know that we're going to have a new senator, U.S. Senator from Michigan. It will either be Mike Rogers or Alyssa Slotkin. Will you pledge, from all the experience you have and the contacts and the things that you've done in Washington, that no matter which one is elected by the people, that if they come to you for help, that you will pledge to help them in any way they can? Absolutely.
We need a strong voice for Michigan. We have one in Senator Peters. We need a second one. Obviously, you know where I am and who I'd like that to be. But the truth is, we need to be able to get things done. And I will provide any help and support that I can, because these are tough times. These are important times, tough times, times when everybody wants to divide us. Globally, the competition is tough. I mean, we need to be all hands on deck for the United States. And of course, for me, everything runs through the lens of Michigan. So I will be happy to help.
And if one of them get elected, one of them will, but they don't ask you for their help, are they foolish?
I will pray for them.
Very good. Senator, thank you. I'm going to throw it to Bob Riney. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Chuck. All right.
That was a great answer. So we have a lot of questions from the audience, and we won't be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to start out with one that I hope you're going to have to ponder for a quick second. Oh. What has been the toughest vote you've had to take, and why?
Oh my goodness. There's a lot of complicated votes. I mean, easy votes too, but where you really have to think about things. I think the toughest vote was the vote on Iraq. I was one of 23 people, both Carl Levin and I, to vote no on going into Iraq. I was in DC, was my first year, 9/11, and the smoke, and I mean, just everything, and what came after that, and supported going into Afghanistan, and didn't have an ideological position. I just said, I want to be persuaded. And I didn't see evidence that Saddam Hussein was behind this. I didn't see the connection. I didn't see. And so I was one of the people who sat in Rumsfeld's defense cabinet room looking at the charts they put up in the pictures and asking the questions and all of that. And really said, this is war, and I'm going to just call it as I see it here. And when I got done with all of that, and we'd seen pictures, but they were like 2-year-old pictures of things that were supposedly happening, and so it just didn't add up for me. Didn't add up. And so I finally get to the end. I'm going to have to do this, and my son and daughter, grown now, I said, okay, this is about sending people to war based on the evidence that I have received and the threat to our country. Would I send my son or daughter to war in this case? And the answer was no. And so if I couldn't send my son or daughter, I sure wasn't going to vote to send yours. And so it was very nerve-wracking, because if something had happened, we'd all get blamed. If we'd been attacked by Iraq, I mean, it was one of those things where, you know, you do it and then you hope you're right, that we're not suddenly going to be attacked by Iraq. But I think over time, this is borne out that I think it was the right decision. So.
Well, thank you. I'm going to stick with a question on wars.
Yes.
And there were several questions about the current status of the
Right.
Middle East and the fact that many of us fear an escalation between Iran
Yep.
and Israel in a political season, which adds to complexity. What do you think about the efforts that need to take place in Washington, D.C. to help mitigate this?
This is so complicated, and I have to say that President Biden, with 50 years in the Senate and being the head of foreign relations, he really does know this backwards and forwards, and is trying desperately to find how to move through this in a very difficult situation. If you start before yesterday and before what's happening with Iran right now, just back to October 7th, when 1,200 people were killed and people were taken as hostages, and they're still not home, including Americans. What Hamas did was barbaric, in my judgment, absolutely barbaric. And Israel has the right to defend itself. Having said that, the loss of Palestinians, innocent Palestinians, and what has happened is just too much. It's too much. I have supported for a long time now having a ceasefire, and the fact that we've got it. Somehow this has got to get figured out, but there's just been too much loss of life in this process. Now, Iran. Now, Iran is not our friend. They're not America's friend. They are some of the folks that when we talk, just to step back a minute, when we get briefed on who's trying to undermine us in terms of the election, Russia, Iran, China, in terms of pitting us against each other in social media and so on. They're looking for any way to go after us, so they are not our friends. On the other hand, a full-scale war in the Middle East is the last thing that we need. Israel, again, has to defend themselves, no question about it. They also have to take responsibility for what they do. But they have been attacked with the missiles and so on. But I will tell you this, I find this whole thing extremely scary. And it takes me back to a time that people aren't focused on now, when President Obama was able to get an agreement with, I think, 50 different countries in Iran to freeze what they were doing on nuclear weapons. And President Trump came in, and I think as much as anything, it was because President Obama had done it. He stopped the whole thing. So now they've been unleashed. There's no accountability. We don't know what's going on. And we're now here, they're within 2 weeks of maybe getting a nuclear weapon, which scares me to death. So, you know, and many of us, when we supported that agreement, did it because you could just see this happening at some point. You could see it down the road. And so now here we are. And they are a threat. And if they have nuclear weapons, that is a threat. And should, you know, should that be, you know, in my mind, taken out? Yeah, because it is a threat. But, you know, actions have consequences. And what happened before that has led to all of this, and the politics, I think, behind it, will probably never get the scrutiny it should, but it should, because we would be in a different spot with what Iran could do right now if that agreement was in place. So.
Thank you. I'm going to bring a question local
Yes.
now, and it may be the last one we get to, but Michigan needs population. Detroit has done amazing things in the Detroit area in just transformation, but we have a lot of work yet to do. As you exit the U.S. Senate and all the influence that you've had to tell the Michigan story, how do we make sure that Michigan's unique attributes turn into federal policies that support our state?
Well, I think this is what I feel is my job, the part of elected officials, the part of elected officials locally, business leaders. You know, we all have a role to play in being able to advocate not only for Michigan and for Detroit, but for the things that work here. I am so proud of the fact that the $25,000 down payment program that the Vice President is now talking about was Detroit. Detroit did that. This is a Detroit program. I'm so proud of the mayor and everyone, but my dear friend Gary Torgo, Huntington Bank, he has been coming to DC, just so you know, before all of this in the elections, saying, we need a national policy on a $25,000 down payment. Home ownership is critical, giving people the capacity to have a home and be able to earn equity and so on. And so I'm so appreciative of Gary, who indicated when folks were saying, what do you think ought to be done? That was the first thing he said. So we just need all of the different kinds of things. Sometimes I think we really, first of all, as a country, I'm sick of people saying, we have a horrible country, we're terrible. You know, and last time I looked, stock market was up, what, highest ever, and I could go round and round and round. But we're not the worst country ever. You know, I'm proud to be an American, and we all should be, and we are leading the world, and the world looks to us all the time. The world looks to us. And so, but the reason I mention is that we have ideas. We just need to double down on the innovation, support the people taking risks, our entrepreneurs, and we need to just tell our story. We don't tell our story as much as we should. And so, you know, we could, it's okay to brag on it. And by the way, just one little caveat here. The patent office a few years ago they're in DC, but they were gonna pick their first regional office. And so I went to them and said, it needs to be in Detroit. It needs to be in Detroit. Oh, Detroit? You know, they were looking at like going to Silicon Valley. I said, no, it needs to be in Detroit. And we put together all this that showed we had more patents in a 20-mile radius of Detroit than any other place in the country. We got the patent office. And I was proud to name it after Elijah McCoy. But we don't realize our strength. We don't realize the people that we have, the businesses we have, the workers that we have. It's not a joke, we have the best workers in the world. And when you talk about the automotive industry and so on. So we need to brag more.
That's
Let's
terrific.
go do that, so.
That's terrific. And I think you have a lot of people that would agree with you in this room. We're going to now go into the lightning round.
Oh.
And this is fun, short, you can be provocative. So I get to pick some of these, which is really cool. You get to pick any musician or band for a private concert in your backyard for your family and friends. Who is it?
Oh, no, there's too many.
Sorry.
Bob Seger.
Bob Seger? All right. And we're invited.
You're invited. I love Bob Seger. I love Bob Seger.
All right. Something on your anti-bucket list, meaning you're never going to do that again.
Never going to do that again. Again, meaning I did it once.
Yep.
You can't take a tour all the way up in the rotunda in the Capitol without a member. It goes way, way up. I don't like heights. But my staff, a number of years ago, coming in, Lansing staff, Michigan staff, really wanted to take a tour. So I said, okay. So we started up, and at one point I couldn't go any farther. I just had to stop. They were allowed at that. They went all the way back. They went all the way up. I barely made it back down. I was dizzy. I was like floating, and I will never do that again. So.
All right. One of your favorite movies?
Oh my gosh, one of my favorite movies. There's too many. I love movies. I love movies. What would be my? Oh gosh, that's just too hard. Well, I was in Batman Superman for 30 seconds.
Critics said it was riveting and Oscar-worthy.
It was like I played the governor of Metropolis, and just don't blink when you see, because you would miss me. You will miss me. But I was actually, I have a credit in the movie. So.
All right, two more. I wish I was better at.
I wish I was better at. I wish I was better at consistently exercising. Like I need to learn to like run, be a runner or something, which I've never done. So that is not my thing, but I need to try.
And last question, what advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
Don't give up. Believe in yourself. Just keep your head down, keep working, and believe in yourself and your own ideas.
It's a great way to end it. Please thank Chuck Stokes and the amazing Senator Debbie Stabenow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to close us out, I will turn it back over to Steve Gregorian.
Thank you. All right, I will close this out really quickly by letting you know, Senator, we are going to all stream Batman. Right? And Senator, on behalf of the DEC board and the entire Detroit Economic Club, we want to say thank you for your service to our country, to our citizens, to our state. You are truly a shining example of what we want from our government leaders. So one more round of applause for the Senator. I mentioned this is your 8th visit. We want to share something with you when I come down there afterwards from the DEC board and its members, so you'll remember your time fondly with the DEC. So thank you again. Chuck and Bob, you guys knocked out of the park. Thanks for being part of the program. Ladies and gentlemen, tell your friends and colleagues to join the Detroit Economic Club. We're a bunch of really good people. On time, every time. I see JR looking at his watch. This meeting of the Detroit Economic Club is now adjourned. Thank you.